I should have brought my presenter up. Yeah. I thought I was going to sit down, so I didn't bring it, but then I realized I don't have to sit down. It'll be more natural for me if I could. I'm more used to doing. I walk all over the place. I usually do. Go ahead. You gonna start? Oh, I can. I'll start because they can hear me anyway. I can't think, can't you? Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for tuning in. My name is Rick Whitmore. Title-wise, I'm the Security and Compliance Manager in the IT Security Office. This presentation is being recorded and it'll be available on the KUIT YouTube channel when we're done. So let's get going. So it's not October anymore, but October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. This is a national campaign sponsored by the Department of Homeland Security and the National Cybersecurity Alliance, and its motto has always been Stop, Think, Connect. This past October was the 15th year of it, and this is an effort to reach out to people who use computers and technology to try to get them to understand the responsibilities they have for the decisions that they make while they're using their technology. So in the security field, we think of things happening in layers, and we have lots of technologies like firewalls and antivirus and intrusion detection systems, and we deploy those things in layers with the idea that if a bad thing gets through one layer, the next layer will stop it. I'm now talking to the layer in the chair, because any one of you can basically open up all of those doors with one mouse click. So this is an effort for you not to be Dave. So here's some of the stuff we'll talk about today. We're going to talk a lot about passwords and a lot about social engineering. So why do I do this? Why do I come out and talk to various groups around the university about cybersecurity? We do this because the university is at risk. That's a list of just some of the potential damage that the university is at risk for. Please do not discount the second one, reputation damage. And increasingly, the university is subject to more and more and more federal regulations. So there are things like HIPAA, which is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. This protects the privacy of your personal medical information. There are criminal penalties associated with HIPAA violations. A nurse in Oregon recently went to prison for posting photographs of her patients on her Facebook profile. FERPA is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. It protects the confidentiality of student information. There's no criminal penalties associated with it, although, so the basic premise would be a student thinks their information has been disclosed inappropriately and they sue the university. Gramm-Leach-Bliley protects your personal financial information in a way that's similar to the way HIPAA protects medical information. Again, there are criminal penalties involved with Gramm-Leach-Bliley. A typical thing like that on this campus would be with the Office of Financial Aid and Scholarships. If they have, for example, a need-based scholarship and they have to get tax returns from the parents to demonstrate the need, that transaction falls under Gramm-Leach-Bliley. PCI is the payment card industry, that's credit cards, and those are civil fines that come down from the big companies like MasterCard and Visa. And a single fine, the first violation costs $50,000, and a PCI violation can be as simple as writing down a credit card number and the 3-digit security code on the same piece of paper. There's a relatively new one, CUI, Confidential Unclassified, Controlled Unclassified Information. This is a designation from the federal government that involves any data that gets exchanged with a federal agency. So we have tons of these things on campus. We have grants from the Department of Education, the Department of Energy, the Department of Defense, Housing and Human Services. You name a federal agency, someone at the university has a relationship with it. That data has to be protected by something called NIST 800-171. NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, and that document outlines the controls that have to be in place when you're dealing with CUI. Currently, there are no systems on campus that comply with NIST 800-171. There's a lot of discussion going on between our office, the Office of Research, General Counsel's office, to try to get our brains wrapped around how we're going to handle this going forward. To cut to the chase, data breaches cost universities money. Those 3 data breaches were all described in that one article in the Chronicle of Higher Education. This is not the reason you want to be in the Chronicle of Higher Education. So, from time to time, groups of auditors get together and they try to figure out how much does a data breach cost an organization. It's a very fluid number. It goes up and down. It depends. It can be industry specific. It depends which group of auditors are generating the number. But the number quoted in that article is $136 per record. So for the University of Maryland, that's $42 million. More recently, a guy named Ken Ponemon, who runs the Ponemon Institute, does this work where he tries to assess how much a data breach costs. Those are the numbers for 2017. So you can see it's gone up a little bit, and it's even a little bit more expensive if you're an educational institution. So here's some of the more recent ones that have happened since 2017. And you can see the financial impact that a data breach can have on a university. And please keep that in mind when you're considering the budget cuts that everybody's going through right now. Here's a couple of examples. Michigan State University lost 400,000 faculty, staff, students, former students, alumni, you name it, they lost it. They say it's going to cost $3 million, but that's the number they told the press it was going to cost. It may not reflect what actually they're spending internally. The University of Massachusetts had a clinic on campus, and one person opened one email message with one corrupted Microsoft Word document, and after that Word document downloaded the malware that encrypted all the data on her workstation and all of their file shares. The subsequent investigation found they hadn't protected their data correctly. It was HIPAA-related data, and they got hit with a $650,000 HIPAA fine. All because they hadn't classified their data correctly and they hadn't protected it correctly. Washington State University was keeping their backup drives in a safe. The drives were in the safe, they were not encrypted. Somebody stole the safe. And there was so much data contained in that safe, they think it may cost them $100 million. One of the most common ways universities lose data is lost or stolen devices. Studies have been done that show people will leave laptops in airports. Sometimes as many as one figure says there are 10,000 laptop computers left in airports a week. People will put them on the belt to send them through the TSA machine and not pick them up on the other end. I don't know why, but they don't. So, a couple of data breaches from our neighbors to the south. Unencrypted laptops stolen from cars containing personal medical information. Our office offers something called whole disk encryption. So, if you have a laptop that is protected by whole disk encryption that our office manages, and that laptop is stolen, we can prove that it was encrypted at the time it was stolen. And that's the difference between declaring a data breach and simply a police report for a stolen device. Kansas and 47 other states have breach notification laws. They're all different. So that's the relevant paragraph from the Kansas breach notification law about what they mean by a breach. So if we have an encrypted laptop that's stolen and we can prove that it was encrypted at the time it was stolen, which our office can, we don't have to declare a security breach. We just file a police report for a stolen laptop. If we do have to declare a data breach, the Kansas law says we have to notify every affected Kansas resident in writing within 30 days. And we have to follow all the 47 other states' laws that have similar breach notification laws. And we have to do it according to whatever the rules of that state are. So you can see how these things can get expensive. So we talked about UMass and poorly classified data. KU has a data classification policy. There's an accompanying document to this called the Data Classification Guidelines and Procedures. The data classification policy is pretty simple. There's only 3 kinds of data. Level 1 is the most confidential, so that's HIPAA, that's Gramm-Leach-Bliley, that's PCI information, that's sensitive research information. FERPA is technically level 1 data. Our office calls FERPA 1.5 because there's so much FERPA-related data flying around this campus all day long that if we put all the controls that are required for full level 1 protection on that data, it would be hard to do business. So some of those controls are relaxed a little bit just so people can get work done. Level 2 data is the general work product you do every day. It's the documents and spreadsheets and all that kind of work that if it's not level 1, it's level 2. Level 3 is intended for the public, which means it could appear on the KU homepage and nobody would care. So if the data you're dealing with is not intended for the public, it has to be protected somehow. If you use KU resources for your data, like file shares, central file storage, research file storage, you are automatically in compliance with the KU data classification policy because all of the correct controls are already baked into those resources. So basic rule of thumb is use KU resources for KU data. Well, another place people put data is in the cloud. I happen to use 4 of those services. My favorite is Evernote, the little green elephant. They're great. We love them. Our data is available to us. We know it's backed up. There are problems with cloud services. Those are just some of the cloud data breaches that have happened in the last 4 years. So Dropbox, for example, lost 69 million usernames and passwords. And about 2.5 years ago, for about a 6-hour period, if you knew the email address of somebody's Dropbox account, you got in. No password required. Dropbox had done an upgrade that opened a security hole, and it took them about 6 hours to figure it out. About 1.5 years ago, Yahoo said, oh my gosh, we lost 6 million usernames and passwords. And then about 8 months later, they said, oh, you know what? It was really 500 million usernames and passwords. And then this past January, they said it was really 3.3 billion usernames and passwords. So if you have a Yahoo account, either drop it, change the password. And if you use any of the sort of lesser savory sites, adult and adult dating sites, you've been popped too. One of the largest data breaches was LinkedIn. LinkedIn lost 169 million usernames and passwords. And they are all sitting on a little portable hard drive in my office. We got a hold of the data dump and we did some analysis on it. So of those 169 million, there were about 5,000 ku.edu email addresses. Of those, about 3,500 had password hashes associated with that username. So I took all of those password hashes and I ran them through a password cracker, which is just a piece of software that cracks passwords. I let it run for about 100 hours, and in 100 hours, I cracked 62% of those passwords. Mostly because there were passwords like password and rock chalk and Kansas and Jayhawk, or stupid variations thereof. Of those passwords I cracked, there were 769 active KU accounts. 4 people were using their current KU credentials on their LinkedIn account. And those are some of the titles of those 769 people whose passwords I cracked. So what's the big deal about this? First of all, what is LinkedIn? LinkedIn is a social media network that is work-related. If I have access to your LinkedIn account, I can see what your work history is. I can see who you work with. I can see who you work for. I can gather a ton of information about you, which as an attacker is very valuable to me. The bad guys know who you are, specifically. They know where you work. They know who you work for. How do they know that? We tell them. We have web pages all over our publicly available website that says, meet our staff. Here's their email addresses. Here's their org chart. There's nothing you can do about that. You're all public employees. All that information is public information. If we didn't tell them who you were and where you work, they would find it someplace else. But you need to be aware of that, in that the people are coming after you because they want your data, they want your computer, they want the access that you have. They want to be able to get a toehold into the network. And from there, they can spread around and do what they need to do. The other piece of that is I have about 2,200 usernames and passwords. If I'm a bad guy, the first thing that I'm going to do is try them at every bank and every big shopping site and everywhere I can think of, because the bad guys know people reuse passwords. Every password that you have has to be unique. Your Amazon password has to be different than your Facebook password, which is different from your Google password, which is different from your KU password. They all have to be complex. Well, how do you do that? That's hard. We're going to give you some tips about how to do that in a couple minutes. So now everybody's kind of worried. Everybody's, oh no, what's going to happen? Don't worry about it. There's a few very simple things that you can do that will give you a whole lot of protection in protecting both your personal data and university information. So the most important thing is to think before you click. Pay attention to what you're doing and where you are when you're doing it. Okay? We're going to talk particularly about passwords, and we're going to talk about phishing. So first, a word or so about passwords. Google did some research from that time frame, May 2016 to May 2017, and that's just some of the information that they came out with. So there's 69 million Google usernames and passwords on the dark web or black market. It's not all that dark. So 788,000 of them were stolen by keyloggers. So a keylogger is either a physical device or a piece of software that sits on a computer and records every keystroke that's entered on the computer. So you can catch username and password because people are typing those in. You can buy a physical keylogger on Amazon for about 40 bucks. And if you've kept up with the news, you'll know that happened to KU. A student here at KU was failing his classes and used a keylogger, a physical keylogger, and installed it on classroom computers and was able to capture the credentials of all of his professors, and then he went in and changed his grades to passing grades instead of the failing grades that he was getting. He has pled guilty to 4 felonies. The biggest sources, of course, is phishing. We'll talk about more in a minute. 17% of password reuse was out there. 12% of people use their same username and password. So like if that for KU, for me, means my username is R. Whitmore and my password is R. Whitmore. Don't do that. So how do you choose passwords? Here's one way. You can think of a phrase that means something to you, and then you can do a bunch of sort of mental gymnastics on it until you come up with a password like that. That is a really, really good password, and it's one I'm never going to use because I'm never going to remember it and I'm never going to be able to type it. Oh, that figure down there is correct, though. Here's another way. This is a web comic called XKCD. The guy who writes it is a former NASA engineer, and he published this about 3 or 4 years ago, and data security experts looked at it and said, he's absolutely correct. So the top panel there, that's the KU password policy. That's how you have to construct your password here at KU. The problem with that is those password crackers I were talking about, it's very easy for them to crack those passwords, and they're hard to remember. So what he recommends is that you use this pattern. So just 4 random words in whatever language you wish. The math in these middle panels is correct. So why is that password better than that one? Well, 1, you can remember it, and 2, the most important characteristic of a password is length. The longer the password is, the better it is. Complexity helps, but length is the most important thing. So the longer you can make your password, the better password it's going to be. Here's what we really recommend, though, is that you don't remember passwords at all and you use a password manager. There are 2 kinds of this. There are web-based ones that sort of integrate with your web browser, and then there are desktop versions too. So some of you are probably really familiar with the web-based ones. LastPass is a big one, Dashlane. There's a bunch of these on the market now. The one I use LastPass. And the way LastPass works is I create a LastPass account, and you have to have a really good password on your LastPass account, and it will nag you until you do one. It won't let you create an account with a bad password. And then once you have that up installed and running, if I go to a website and I'm going to create a new account, I put in a username, for example, like my email address, and then LastPass automatically creates a password for me, and it auto-populates it in that form. I don't know what that password is. I can go look it up if I need to do it, but mostly I don't even know what it is. It's a good, long, complex password that I never have to remember. So the next time I go to that website, LastPass just logs me in. One of the things about LastPass, though, it is a cloud service. Okay, it is a cloud service that says we have all the passwords. LastPass has had data breaches. They've lost customer information. They've never lost anybody's password store because their encryption is actually really good on the back end. But they've lost customer information like email addresses and that kind of thing. LastPass and almost all of those have at least a free version. LastPass you can use for free. It works on your phone, your computers, tablets, anything, and it will synchronize the password store between them. So you'll have the same access to the same passwords on your phone as you do on your computer. However, because LastPass is a cloud service, there's certain things I don't keep in LastPass. I don't keep anything KU related in LastPass, and that's really easy to do. You can just say, you can tell LastPass, don't remember any passwords for ku.edu. And I don't keep anything really, really super sensitive in there like banking or credit card account passwords. For those, I use a desktop password manager, and the one I use is KeePass. KeePass is completely free. It works on anything. There's versions for Mac, Linux, Windows, every phone you can think of. You can synchronize the password store between devices. It's less convenient. It's not like automatic like it is with LastPass. The best part about this is it's only accessible to my computer. Not accessible anywhere else. I carry a copy of my LastPass, my KeePass database on a USB key on my keychain. So I have my passwords with me, and if I lose my keys, I'm not worried because there's a really good, strong passphrase on my KeePass account, and I'm not worried about somebody being able to crack it. And again, the encryption in KeePass is really, really good. we really recommend that you use these. There is not an officially KU supported one of these, but your local TSC staff can help you out with either LastPass or a desktop password manager. LastPass would love to sell us an enterprise version, but we don't have any money for it. So use a password manager. And if you use a password manager, you can combine it with something called multi-factor authentication. Again, if you work in KUIT, you're already dealt with this. So multi-factor authentication is basically a thing that you know, a username and password, and a thing that you have. Sometimes the thing that you have is a physical token. My wife used to deal with the federal government all the time, and she had a bunch of these on her keychain. So she goes to a federal website, she logs in, username and password, she pushes a button on the token, it generates a one-time only 6-digit code, she types the code in, and she's in, and there's software on the back end that knows what numbers to expect from the token. Those are more used in the corporate world. More generally, the thing that you have is your phone. And this can work in a couple of ways. So for example, on Twitter, you can turn on two-factor authentication. You go into your account settings, you can enable multi-factor or two-factor authentication. It has different names depending on where you're looking at it. And you can have set up a two-factor with text messages from Twitter. So you put in your phone number, mobile phone number, it sends a couple text messages back and forth to make sure that it's got all the numbers right. And then the next time you log into your Twitter account, it's username and password, and then it comes up with a box that says, please enter the 6-digit code that we just texted you. And your phone buzzes, and there's a 6-digit code in the text message. You put the code in, and you're logged in. And usually there's a checkbox that says, remember me, and it'll remember you for whatever that particular application will remember you for. Sometimes 30 days, 90 days, 180 days, just depends on which application is doing it. So I was on vacation 2 summers ago, and I woke up in my hotel room, and there's a text message on my phone from Twitter, you know, with the code in it. And I said to myself, I didn't try to log into Twitter. I was asleep. I had a really bad password on my Twitter account, and somebody got it. And they were trying to log in as me. So 2 things, they didn't get into my account because I had my second factor with me. 2, I now knew that somebody had my Twitter credentials because they got far enough into the login process to send the text message. So I ran over to my computer and quickly changed my Twitter password to a decent password. The text part of this is going away. Security experts have said a text message is too easy to intercept. And the thing that's replacing those are apps, and the big one is Google Authenticator. So Google Authenticator works on any phone. You just put the app, you install the app, and then you, for example, you go to Google and enable multi-factor authentication on your account, and it presents a QR code like that, and you scan it with your with the app, and it sets it up for you. So the next time you go to Google, you log in username and password, and it says, please enter the code that the Authenticator app just generated. And you open the Authenticator app on your phone. There's the list of services that you have it enabled for, and then there's a 6-digit code, and you just type the 6-digit code in, and you're in. One thing about Google Authenticator is those codes are time limited. They only last for 2 minutes. So, and there's a little countdown clock next to it. So if you're about to enter a code and you notice the countdown clock's about to expire, just wait and wait for a new code to get generated and use that one, because there'll be a delay and then it won't work. KU is adopting multi-factor authentication for all faculty and staff. The app we're using is something called Duo. Duo has an additional feature called what they call push. So the way it works is, like, everybody in IT has to do this now. You log into a single, using KU single sign-on, like you're going to log into the portal. You go through KU single sign-on, and you put in username and password like you're used to doing, and then a second page comes up, and it says, it gives you some choices for how to do your second factor. And the big one is you can just press a button that says send me a push. You push that button, your phone buzzes, and the app pops open, and it has 2 buttons, approve and deny. You approve it and you're in. That's all you got to do. It's really simple. You can also generate 6-digit codes with the Duo app. So if you're someplace that doesn't have cell coverage or something like that, but you do have wireless, but your phone for some reason won't get the push, you can just use the app, the Duo app on your phone to generate a 6-digit code that will let you in. Okay, this is currently in pilot. There's about 200, probably close to 300 people in it now. Right now it's rolling out on an opt-in basis. There will be a drop dead date. There will be a date probably in the fall semester next year that if you're faculty or staff on campus, you will have to have multi-factor authentication. Some people will say, oh, I don't want to use my phone for this. We can make tokens available to you on with some certain criteria. We have tokens that we can have, so you can use a physical token if you need to. You're not going to like a physical token. The phone is easier, it's quicker, it's more accessible. So this is great. This is coming, and it's going to make everybody's life a lot better. Oh, and that keystroke logger thing I talked about, it made the news. And multi-factor authentication would have prevented both of these incidents. So that's the keystroke logger one at the top. If multi-factor authentication was in place, it didn't matter if he had the password of the professor, because you wouldn't have the second factor and the kid would have never gotten into their account. And then we had people fall for a phishing scam that lost their paychecks. And again, multi-factor authentication would have prevented that. So I guess most people are probably familiar somewhat with social engineering. Social engineering is a kind of set of techniques, I guess, whereby somebody uses some kind of an emotional appeal to get you to do something or to reveal information that you wouldn't normally do. So it can happen in person, it can happen over the phone, it can happen by email, that's called phishing, and it can happen on websites and all kinds of things like that. So there's always an emotional appeal to that, and the university in particular is really vulnerable to this. Why? Because we are in the helping business. One of our missions is to disseminate information to the world. People call us, ask us questions, we want to help. We want to be able to give them those answers. Oh no! Have I been hacked? Oh no, what happened? What happened? So if you're web surfing and something like that pops up on your computer all of a sudden, what are you going to do? So what is this trying to do? You've been infected. You're going to get cut off from the network. We're going to not let your computer do anything unless you call this number. Don't call the number. This is just a noisy web page. That's all this is. They are trying to scare you into calling the number. And if you call the number, you will reach a helpful Microsoft support technician who will work with you to fix your problem. And they will be really nice to you and talk to you and talk to you until they ask you to install remote control software on your computer so they can log into your computer and fix your problem. You don't have a problem. You've run into a noisy web page. Don't call the number. We've had 5 people on this campus call the number, to the point where people installed remote control software on their desktop and people logged into their computer and then had access to everything that was on that computer. It cost one organization on campus several $100,000 to clean up from that. Stop. There we go. So phishing. Phishing is social engineering by email. There's a particular kind of phishing called spear phishing, which is a phishing attack targeted at any specific organization or group. So here's an example. There's the message, something's going to happen to your email account. We can tell this is spear phishing because that's the physical address of the Price Computer Center where we all work. And that's the phone number of the customer service center. So they tailored this message to be KU specific, and that's a spear phish. So I used to do, when I gave presentations, I used to ask people, how many of you have been phished? Well, I know how many of you have been phished because we phished you. Security Office has phished you quarterly for a couple of years now. So this is the first one we did. That's the message. They were sent to all faculty and staff. We got 743 people to give us their KU online ID and password. And those are some of the top titles of the offenders on that. Notice the top two, GTA and GRAs. And think about how much access graduate students have to student data or to sensitive research data, and how little attention sometimes we pay to them, and they're giving them good advice on how to be secure. We done it again. This was a different one, kind of similar results. The GDAs and GTAs went down a little bit. Unclassified, if you're an unclassified staff person, feel good because they're always the lowest. The overall click rate through any one of these is roughly between 7 and 8%. That is until we talked about parking. So everybody got this message about their ticket that they had to pay. This blew up in our face. It blew up our phone. It got to the point where we got mentioned in the Lawrence Police Department Twitter account, because people were calling the Lawrence Police Department asking about the ticket and what to do about the ticket. And they gave us a helpful write-up of what was wrong with our message. Thanks, LPD. They gave us a helpful meme to go along with it. But the part of that is, look at the results. We had a 27% success rate. You know, of GTAs, GRAs, student staff, people terrified that they got a ticket that they didn't have. We had one faculty member first go down to the Douglas County Courthouse to pay his non-existent parking ticket. And when they told him he didn't have one, he went to KU Parking to pay his non-existent parking ticket. I don't think we're going to touch parking again. So let's take a look at some real world examples here. So the first one, look, there's going to be an email outage and you have to click here to make sure all your information is backed up. It's sent to Outlook Exchange users. That's us. It's what we use for our campus email. Any idea if this is real or fake? Anybody? It is fake. So first of all, look at that return address. It's in Australia. And second of all, there's this weird paragraph down here that seems sort of out of context, and it's oddly worded, and I'm not sure what that means. Now, one thing about return addresses, they are not definitive. It's very easy for someone to spoof a return address on an email message. So just because it might have a legit return address doesn't mean it's legit by itself. Here's another one. Oh my God, security alert. Somebody might have accessed my Microsoft account. I can recover my account. I can make my account more secure. What do you think? Yeah, that one's real. If you have a Microsoft account, Microsoft thinks something's happened to it, that's the message you're going to get. Thank you, Microsoft, for sending a phishing message. Something that looks just like one. So it really does come from account.microsoft.com. If you hover over those links, they go to live.com, and that's Microsoft. Let's look at one more. So, oh, it's from KU Payroll. Look, it's going to https://hr.ku.edu. That's where we all go to deal with our paychecks and put our time in and stuff. What do you think, real or fake? It's fake. Yeah, it's got a really funky return address. And if you hover over that link, you're not going to hr.ku.edu, you're going there. And if you clicked on that link and went there, you ended up there. That is a perfect 100% pixel by pixel perfect copy of our HR login page. And if you put in your online ID and password right there, it simply redirected you to the real HR site. But once you had given up your credentials there, within minutes, the bad guys used those credentials to log in to the real hr.ku.edu and change the destination of your paycheck from whatever bank you electronically deposited into to a Bank of America branch in Herndon, Virginia. We found out 2 pay periods later that 5 people were affected and 3 of them did not get paid. This particular attack was a spear phish targeting the distinguished faculty. There's a web page that lists our distinguished faculty with all of their email addresses, and they just scraped all the email addresses off the page. And clearly they did this because they thought those are the people who are going to have the biggest paychecks. It made the news. It was also in the journal world and a couple other places. So if we suspect that you've given up your credentials, this is the process that IT uses to go through with this. This can happen from the IT security office. It can happen from email administrators. So for example, in our office, we monitor the abuse account. And when we get a message like that sent to abuse, we do a lot of digging. And we look to see if we can detect clicks to the link from on campus. If we detect that you click that link, the computer that we know you're using, click that link and try to go there, we are going to reset your account. Okay, this is going to seem harsh, but this is the best way that we can protect both your personal information, like your paycheck, and protect university data. So what'll happen if we detect that you clicked on a link? That's it. We're done there. We're going to go in, we're going to reset your password and your security questions, and then you'll be contacted by the customer service center, who will help walk you through the process of creating a new password and creating new security questions. But phishing isn't always about stealing your credentials. So here's one. Ooh, look, we have an attachment. And I'm going to be charged some amount of money on my MasterCard, and I have to view the attachment to avoid it, and it gives me the helpful password for the document. And you can see it's a Word doc. So when the person on campus opened that Word doc, the person opened it at 8:40 in the AM, 22 seconds. 30 seconds later, it started encrypting. The malware that it downloaded started encrypting every single file on her computer. And it finished 6 minutes later. And then it replaced the background image, you know, where it's usually like a nice landscape or a picture of your kids or something, with that message. And it also left one unencrypted file on the computer that gave you that. And that's all the information you need to know about how to get the Bitcoin and where to send the Bitcoin that you're going to need to recover your files. So if you click on one of those links, it's a really nice web page. It's very helpful. The instructions are very clear. And within 5 days, you have to give them 1.25 Bitcoin, which at the time of that attack was about $941. As of this morning, 1.25 Bitcoin is $5,200. And you also see, you can see there's a countdown timer. And if you don't do it within 5 days, the price doubles. And then the rest of it is, here's create a Bitcoin wallet, how to buy your Bitcoins, and what Bitcoin address to send it to. We have had 6 ransomware events on campus. We have never paid a ransom. Our general procedure is If file shares get ransomware, they simply get restored to the previous backup, which happens nightly, so it's not a lot of data loss. If your personal, if your work computer is encrypted, that's it, you're done. We don't recover them. We wipe them clean and start over. So you're going to lose all the data that's on your desktop if you get ransomware. Now, we haven't been to a place where we've had a real need to possibly want to get the data on a desktop back. Law enforcement says don't pay the ransom. That's the constant advice we hear from both state and federal law enforcement. You may have seen these recently. Look, it's a message from the chancellor who wants you to go buy iTunes gift cards and then scratch them off and send him the codes of the iTunes gift cards. If you get a message like that, ask yourself this: why would the chancellor ask me to buy iTunes gift cards? They just want the money. Here's a fairly detailed one that's kind of similar. So we have redacted at KU to redacted at KU. I'm going to be sending you details. We need to do a wire transfer of money. It says, okay, do you have a contact? Do you have the information? I'll need the documentation. Sure, here it is. We want a payment of $18,599, and that's where to send it. They want to send it to a Wells Fargo bank in Big Stone Gap, Virginia. And the recipient is a person named Melissa who lives in Dryden, Virginia. Dryden, Virginia is a little teeny tiny town in far western Virginia. It's almost in Kentucky. And Big Stone Gap, Virginia is right up the road. That's the bank. That's the Wells Fargo Bank in Big Stone Gap, Virginia. Okay, we're going to do this as fast as we can. I will send this later. Let me know when it's done. We're trying to contact Commerce Bank to make the transfer. I'll let you know when it's complete. Benefit, hey, we're waiting. We want to know the status, right back with details. So they're trying to inject a little bit of urgency into the process. And then there's a delay. Our normal contact at Commerce is out, and we're trying to figure out how to do it again. We'll get this to you as soon as possible. And then the attacker screws up and uses the wrong email address in the last message. And that's the only reason $18,599 didn't walk out the door. So this particular unit had no kind of like method of assessing the veracity of any of these things. Someone emailed and said, send me money. He said, okay, I'll do it. So think about your business processes in terms of somebody's requesting money, somebody's making a request for money. What's the official process you do to verify that and make sure that's all correct? I'm almost done here. And now, yeah, I know. It's not that scary. So what do? Don't reuse passwords. Use a password manager and two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication to help protect you, help you to pick strong, unique passwords that are easy to use and that you don't have to really try to remember. Don't leave your computer unattended. Lock your desktop when it's not in use. You'd be surprised at the pranks that your coworkers will put on you if you leave your desktop open. Be careful about email attachments at all. If you're not expecting it, don't open it. If you have questions and say, hey, where's sent me, contact the person if you know them. If you get an email attachment from somebody you don't know, don't open it. Use firewalls, antivirus software. If you're using KU managed devices, that's all taken care of for you. And you do the same thing on your home computers. All of your computers, Windows and Macintoshes, all have built-in firewalls. They're turned on by default. Leave them on. Keep your stuff upgraded. Keep all your devices up to date. They want to do this. They will do this themselves. Let them do it. When your computer says, I have to restart to finish updating your computer, let it do it. go get a cup of coffee or something and let your computer restart and finish those installations. And most important, stop and think before you do stuff online. A phrase in our office is, please stop clicking stuff. Thank you, everybody. That's how to get a hold of us. That's our email address. That's our phone number. Contact the security office if you have any questions. And does anybody have any questions of me right now? Anybody? Yeah, I see our great student Carter is on the line. If you contact our office, most likely you're going to get Carter. He's awesome. Oh, we got a few more minutes. I can hang around if people have questions. So thanks, everybody, for coming. Mm-hmm.